Hi everybody! So welcome to the launch of Langosh and Peppi, Fugitive Days. Hey everybody! Hi! Nice to see people joining in. So I'm Veronica, Post, and hi! And this is my virtual launch for my book. So it's my book launch quarantine style. And my book is this book, Langosh and Peppi, Fugitive Days. So thanks for joining in. And I just want to say hi to everybody out there who's stuck in their houses and, you know, doing the whole isolation thing. It's really hard. So thank you so much for being here to support me for this, because I'm pretty excited about it. I've been working on this book for a long time now. I'm going to talk about the whole thing, like where it started and how it got to where it is now. But essentially it started like in 2011. So it's been a long time coming, and I never expected that I would be launching my book during a massive worldwide pandemic. So there's that, but it's been really, really nice, and everyone's been really supportive, and I'm super happy with how the book turned out. So thank you so much to Conundrum Press for publishing my book and for all of the support, especially from Andy and Sarah through the whole process, because it was a lot, my first book. Yeah, I learned a lot, and it took a long time. But yeah, I wanted to sort of start off by talking a bit about the book and a bit about myself. So the book is kind of like a fictionalized autobiography. Hi Ned, hi Anna. Thanks for coming. Yeah, so it's like it's a fictionalized autobiography. It's based mostly on my life and things that happened to me in real life. But hi Ned. Hi Faith. But I changed the people around a little bit, and instead of, creating a character, thank you, Anna. Instead of creating a character that looked like me, and like exactly call me, I made them a little bit different, and it made me more comfortable with telling the story. So it felt a little bit less personal. So all of the things that happened in this book happened to me, or people that I really love and care about. And it's kind of all based on a trip that I took to Europe. Well, a couple of trips, actually. So the first one being in 2011, 2012. And that was the first time that I went to Hungary, and I met so many wonderful people there, and spent about a year in Hungary, but also traveled to the Balkans quite a bit. So I was in Sarajevo for a couple of months, and I was in Serbia as well, in Belgrade. And I met wonderful people in all of those places. And I was really influenced by what I saw there, and by all of the, I guess, like the cultural differences and things that were happening around me. And also because I was traveling without a job for like a year, and I'm not super good at not having stuff to do. Hi Emma and Grady. So I needed a project to kind of pass the time. So I started keeping a journal as a comic book. And I've always drawn comic books since I was a little kid. So I think I was probably like in grade 1 when I did my first comic book with my best friend Kathleen. And we called it Freckle Juice. And it was like autobiographical stories of what life is like for a person in the first grade. And I just kind of never stopped. I always really liked comics a lot. And I was really influenced by Calvin and Hobbes when I was a kid. Loved Calvin and Hobbes so much. Archie comics, I read tons of those. Even though I considered them less good than Calvin and Hobbes, I still couldn't stop reading them. They were like the soap opera of comics for me. I read a lot of Tintin, Garfield. I loved Garfield. I still love Garfield. Peanuts, kind of all of those classics. And then Sailor Moon and Astro Boy, Gary Larson. I love The Far Side. So yeah, all of that stuff influenced me a lot. And I just kept on drawing. And so when I was traveling in Europe, drawing was a way of keeping myself preoccupied so that I didn't feel like I was totally aimless, and I was keeping a journal. So that's where this whole project started. And I never knew it was gonna like lead to a published book, but there you go. So yeah, if you guys are interested in adventure stories, where there's lots of traveling and lots of scenery and lots of interesting locations, then you might like this book. It's also it touches a little bit on history. I'm not a historian, and I'm also not a journalist. So I'm just gonna be clear about that. Hi, Megan! So this is not supposed to be like a totally accurate historical account of anything. It's just what I witnessed, and it's filtered through my barely educated perspective on European history. But if you do have an interest in recent history, you might also like it, because it talks quite a bit about the recent history of Hungary and the Balkan area, which is really interesting. Way too complicated for me to get in depth on in this book, but if you're interested in those regions, you might also enjoy the book. But yeah, I guess the other themes are sort of more about privilege, which was something that I was very aware of while traveling there, because I was extremely privileged in comparison to the people that I was making friends with and seeing. So being confronted with that extreme difference in privilege was a big reason for me wanting to write the book. And also the other thing, which is talked about a little bit in the blurb about the book, was that I happened to be in Hungary during the Migrant Crisis of 2015. Hi, Emily. So that also was a very intense thing to see and to be in close proximity to. And my interactions with people during that time were really, really difficult for me to process emotionally. So this book was also a way for me to work through that. And that took a few years. And I'm still dealing with some of the stuff that I saw during that period. Hi, Annie. Aw. So yeah, this is also a book about conflict and war and privilege and hard choices and all of those things. So it's a little sad, and it's also a little funny, and I think it's pretty good. But anyways, enough about that. I'm gonna show you guys a little bit about my sort of evolution of style, and then I'm gonna get to a bit of a drawing tutorial, just for something to do. So I'm working on a new book now, so I'm gonna ink some of like a page from that, and I'll talk about it while I'm doing it. And I think it would be cool for you guys to see sort of where I started from. So I actually went back, like I dug through my trunk at home, and I found my journal that I had back in 2011. And I thought I'd show you what that looked like so you could see what it started out as and then what it turned into. So let me show you here. So these are the original pages of the book. So you can probably see that it's pretty different from what it turned into being this. So this is kind of where I ended up. So yeah, I ended up using markers to shade. My lines became quite different, but this was the original journal and what the characters originally looked like. So that's kind of neat. Let me see here. Yeah, so that's kind of what it started out like. And my journal was mostly drawings. I wasn't doing a whole bunch of writing, but I did write some stuff down, and like looking back on this, it's kind of cool because I'm like, oh yeah, there's all these little stories in here that I didn't have time to add into the book. You know, I couldn't put absolutely everything in there, but there's some gems in here, so I might have to put those into the next book that I do. And I have started working on that now that I'm pretty much stuck in my house most of the time. So yeah, so let me see if I can figure out how to turn this screen around here. Just a sec. Technical difficulty. There we go. So yeah, so here's some of my writing, and there's what Langosh looked like in Peppi. And these are like my rough sketches. Here's a sketch of the train station in Sarajevo. This is like a little interaction of Langosh and Peppi. That's what they used to look like before. Going in and trying to find a place to stay. And this is them like looking out over the city. This is actually what turned into the little animation that Annie McMillan did. So this was like the original sketch from back in the day of them looking out over Sarajevo. But yeah, as you can see, my sketches are pretty rough to start out with. I kind of draw the background and then I add the characters on top. So that's where it all began. And this guy here, which was heavy and annoying to lug around, but I lugged it around for like over a year. And then I took those drawings and I got this. So this is like the cheapest sketchbook that you can buy in Hungary. And I was just starting to do some pen and ink stuff. So this was taking what I had done before, and I just started basically like going over it with literally a pen and ink. So I had like a dip pen, liquid ink, and I was just obviously like cross-hatching like crazy. So all of that detail is cross-hatched with a fountain pen. And Langosh was way rounder back then. He was basically like a cookie with like a little tiny head. So it's kind of funny looking back on it because I didn't purposely decide to change the way the characters looked, but just from drawing them over and over and over again for years, they just kind of naturally turned into something a little bit different. So, but this was early stuff here. So this is Langosh like walking up a shady. This is them exploring an abandoned, well, actually an abandoned building, but a building that hadn't been finished yet. So the 2008 crisis saw an end to a lot of development that was happening in Budapest. So there was a lot of unfinished buildings that were basically just sitting there with like no walls or windows or anything like that. So this is just Langosh and Peppi walking around and exploring one of those and kind of having fun together, like looking out over the spaces. So yeah, I had like a handful of these sketchbooks and I filled them up. Ooh, yeah. So this is actually featured in my book. So this is a scene of Langosh and Peppi and a character Yeva discovering a nuclear bunker outside and sort of the outskirts, the suburbs of Budapest. So yeah, so this ended up being in the book because that was such a crazy experience. So I don't want to like give too many things away, but there's some pretty cool stories in there of Langosh and Peppi discovering really crazy stuff. So there's a lot of like finding tunnels, finding hidden places, finding abandoned things, like sort of Soviet spy tunnels and whatnot, and that stuff is all in there. So if you like adventures and things like that, you also might like it. Anyways, this is more recent stuff. So this is an actual sketch from the book. So this is my pencil sketch of a page. Just broke it down, and I don't always use this format of panels, but when I'm doing a lot of panels that are just dialogue based and not so much scenic, I tend to do this type of layout because I don't need to devote so much space to the background. So this is a basic page here. So it's Langosh and Raji there, and Yeva and Peppi's in there too a little bit. And this is them just having a little conversation. And then this is the second phase of that. So I tend to like to leave some panels open. So I won't put borders on every panel because I think it gives a little bit more breathing room and it looks nice. So I'll arrange that. I'll figure out where I want to put my panels and I'll do a little bit of inking. And then this is like the final stage. So this is inked and then shaded, and then the background stuff is put in there, and all of the dialogue is done. So that's what it looks like when it's totally finished. So yeah, so that's kind of my drawing process. And this is an old sketchbook. This is one of those old ones that I got in Budapest, probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, one of these ones. And this is a new story. So this is a never before seen story about Serbia. And this is kind of what I'm working on now as another book. So this is Langosh and another friend who is based on a real person. Everyone's kind of based on real people. So that's Alexander. And I'm just going to show you guys a little bit how I draw my characters. So I have it kind of roughed out here in pencil, and then I like to use a light table to do some drawings because I find it really annoying to ink it in and then have to erase everything because erasing just is messy, and then I end up trying to rush it and then I crinkle the page and it gets all ruined. So instead of doing that, I will use my light table. And I've already decided where I want my borders to be for this. So I'm going to attempt to hold my phone and do a little bit of drawing here. So hopefully you guys can see that pretty clearly. So there's my characters. Alexander, Langosh, and there's like a little bit of a background scene here. This is from a fish market in Belgrade. So I'm just gonna ink the characters and you guys can watch how that process goes. From now on, I'm just gonna be using a regular, well, this is like one of these V7 tech point marker pen things. I'm going to use these from now on instead of the pen and ink with like a nib and liquid ink, because that was very, very difficult to make consistent. So I feel like if I change now, I'll be able to get more consistent style in my future work. So yeah, this little panel here is from a story And I hope you guys like just listening to me ramble on here about stuff, because I feel like a little bit like I'm talking into a void. If you have any questions, just please ask me questions and I'll try to answer them as I go along. But in the meantime, I'll just tell you a random story that's going to be in here. So this is based on an event from when I was traveling in Serbia, and this was probably in 2013 or 14 when this happened. I have to go back into my journals to check. But I was there in Belgrade visiting my friend Alexander, and he decided that he wanted to take me on a little trip out to a smaller village on the train. And so he had sort of planned the whole thing, and he was like, oh, it's going to be super fun because it's going to be a really old train, and you'll like it, because he knows that I like trains and he knows that I like old stuff. So he's like, you're going to love this. It's like a really old Soviet train, and it's going to be so cool and so rickety and old school, and you're really going to love it. So I was getting all excited about it, and he was really talking it up. So we spent the morning getting ready, and we went to this fishing market to get some snacks and catch our train from there. And long story short, that train that he promised me broke down and didn't come, and I was really disappointed, and our trip kind of got canceled. And he told the ticket inspector about it. And something that you should know about Alexander is that he can make friends with anybody at any time, anywhere. So he made friends with this ticket inspector, and he was explaining how disappointed I was about the fact that my train wasn't going to be there. And the ticket inspector felt bad for me, and he took me to the engine of the train to show me what the engine was like, to kind of make up for the fact that my trip was canceled. And so I got to see the engine of this train, which was pretty cool, and I met the driver. And then they cracked out watermelon from this little mini fridge they had, and pop, and they were like, yeah, wow, you're here all the way from Canada. And they gave me watermelon slices, and we were all drinking pop together in the engine of this train. And then the driver, at the next stop, he got out of his seat, and he basically forced me to drive the train. He was like, you can drive the train. And I was like, oh my God, I don't even know how to drive a car yet. At this point, I'd never even driven a car before. And I was like, I don't think so. And then they were all like, yeah. And they pushed me into the driver's seat. And he was like, just put your foot on that pedal and just push the pedal all the way down. And so I did. And it was so crazy. It was kind of a fast train. It was a new kind of speedy train. And I drove the train to the next station, and I was terrified, and I kept on taking my foot off the pedal, and the guys were like, no, keep going, go faster, don't slow down. The train was just lurching along outskirts of Belgrade, and I'm sure all the passengers were really confused about what was happening. But I don't know, it was just one of those crazy things where I was like, this would only happen in Serbia. Would a random Canadian tourist be allowed to enter the engine of a train and then be allowed to just drive the train because the people felt bad for her? So, I don't know. There's a lot of kind of funny, cute stories like that that were happening to me when I was traveling, and I really didn't want to forget about them. So, keeping this kind of comic book journal was a way of me to remember all of these things and kind of, just commemorate them. And turns out I had so many stories that I kind of had enough for a book. So I decided to just go ahead and ask if anybody would be interested in publishing my book. And so thanks again to Conundrum Press and Andy Brown for taking a look at what I had been working on and giving me a chance, and basically believing that I could do it. So yeah, I feel super lucky, super privileged to be able to have this platform to tell my weird stories of my travel days. But also, yeah, like I was saying before, those days were a lot of fun, a lot of really funny and sweet things happened, like the story that I just told about being allowed to drive the passenger train. But also there was a lot of stuff that I kind of had to process. Not that I wasn't expecting it. I think I realized that traveling to places like Serbia, I probably would be confronted with like different realities to what I was used to, but yeah, I think it was the process of getting to know people like Alexander and his family and his friends that made it a little bit more real for me, like what it is like living in those places, and the type of difficulties that people face, as well as the things that make it really lovely and make the Balkans one of my favorite places in the world that I've ever traveled to, as well as a very complicated place politically and just in terms of what daily life is like. So yeah, if you're interested in having an interesting trip, I would, and you're, a little bit venturesome, I would definitely recommend Serbia as a place to go. Also, really delicious food. So, yeah. So that, here, let me turn this off and just put my light back over here. So that's kind of like what it looks like here. This is a pretty quickly done little inked in page here. But, that's sort of what it looks like. I think probably I was going to go ahead and like do the whole page like this. I might want to choose a slightly finer nib, but as it stands, I think it looks pretty good like this. I don't do as much cross-hatching as I used to do. Like, I don't know, like if I go back here and I look at this, it's like, it's just, it's nice, but it takes a lot of work. It's pretty time consuming and pretty like intensive in terms of effort. There you go. But I also think from the experience of doing the book, it looks really nice to have it just a little bit more simple and just keep the sort of lines to a minimum. Anyway, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm into now. That's what I've gotten into. Here, let's see if I can get this light turned around here and get a little bit better, less shadowy. With drawing, I don't know, it's just crazy how much it changes. I was trying to maintain like a consistent style for the book, and I remember talking to Andy Brown at Conundrum about it and being like, yeah, don't worry, Andy, I'm going to keep a totally consistent style. Like, I have a whole strategy that I'm working on here where I'm just going to pencil everything first, and then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to ink it later so that when I ink it, it'll all be consistent. And even with that, I wasn't able to maintain a lot of consistency. I think I would be now. I think I would be able to now because it's almost become automatic for me the way that I draw the characters. But at the time, I thought it was going to be way easier to maintain consistency than it actually is. It's really tricky over the course of like a book that's that long. The book is, how long is it? like 328 pages long or something like that. So because when you're in the thick of it, you're just drawing a lot and you're not really thinking about going back and spending a lot of time looking at what you did before. Because it just, you're like, oh, well, I'm already done with that. Like, I'm moving on. I have so many more pages that I need to do, so I'm just going to do that. And then before you know it, your style has changed quite a lot without you even realizing it. So I think it takes a long time to get a signature style, I guess. And I mean, who knows how much longer I'm going to be drawing the characters exactly like this. But hopefully I'll be able to maintain it for a while. Yeah, so there's the guys. There's Alexander and Langosh and Peppi doing their thing. And now I'm going to come in with my marker here. So these are pro markers. Whatever. They're just a little bit less expensive than a lot of the other markers out there, but they're still pretty nice. They're like alcohol based, so they don't leave so many streaks behind. So I'm going to come in and just do a little bit of markering here. You guys are getting a sneak preview of what might become the next book. Who knows? We'll just have to see. I have to see what Andy thinks about that. So there's Peppi. And then with Alex, Alex is going to have dark hair. And I think I'm going to give him, I don't know, these are the weird decisions that you have to actually put some thought into, because these guys are going to be wearing the same clothes pretty much all the time. I'm not going to change their outfits very much. So I need to actually think about it. I like to kind of alternate it so that since Langosh pretty much always has dark pants and a white top, I'm going to do the opposite thing for Alexander's character. Just so that if they're standing next to each other or they're overlapping, there's a little bit of contrast happening there, so it doesn't look like they just blend into each other and become one thing. So I'll give Alexander a dark jacket, and we'll give him dark shoes too. There we go. So there's that, and then I'm going to just shade in a little bit of this over here, and also some of the background details too. Yeah, so I think this book that I want to work on during quarantine times about my trip to Serbia will be fun. It's going to be definitely a shorter project than the first book was, because I spent probably a grand total of 4 months in Serbia, so not as much time as I spent in other places, but it was a really intense time where a lot of things happened, and there's lots of stories to be told, and lots of things that I saw and experienced there that I think are pretty interesting. So it'll be a shorter book than the first one, but I think it'll kind of fill out the background story of Langosh and Peppi a little bit too. Also because I had all of these stories on the go, and I had them already pretty much kind of drawn and penciled, and I was like, I don't want to just leave these behind and not do anything with them, so it makes sense to do another book using all of these little tidbits that didn't really make sense in Fugitive Days. But there's a lot of ideas that I need to really consider. There's probably going to be a few books, hopefully, because the way that Fugitive Days ends, and I'm not going to, spoil it for anyone, but definitely ends with a bit of a cliffhanger. So there's certainly potential for a follow-up to the ending of Fugitive Days as well. The stuff about Serbia, like that I'm working on right now, is a little bit more like a prequel, or yeah, I guess you could call it a prequel. Stuff that happened before the events that took place in Fugitive Days. But yeah, there's a lot that happened in the events after Fugitive Days that I think would be pretty interesting to get into as well. Whoa, okay, I'm seeing all these comments here. For some reason, they stopped showing up, but I'm just going to look through them here and see. All right, let me turn my thing around here so you can see my face again. Hi, everybody. So, yeah. Cool. Oh, thanks, Megan. Really nice to see all of you guys. Oh, JJ Steves, Hungarian stew is something I miss so much. When we lived in Budapest, I will always dream of the food. Yeah, totally. I miss Hungarian stew as well. I was vegetarian at the time, or at least I was mostly vegetarian at the time, but we were always going to this place called Lahel Charnock, which is like a little, like a fresh food market. And they had this buffet style restaurant there, and they had this really good thing called lencha fuzilek, which is like a lentil stew. And we would go there and get the lencha fuzilek all the time. And also, yeah, goulash. I remember my friend Attila made goulash in a bograch one time, like a cauldron over a fire, and it was the best thing. Yeah, the food there is so good. Oh my gosh, Hungarian food's amazing. Why is there not more Hungarian restaurants? I passed by a place the other day here in Halifax that's kind of in this, it's near this place called Bears Lake, which is like a commercial area on the outskirts of town. And there's a place called the Budapest Bistro, but it looked kind of like a fancy bar or something, and I was like, So anyways, I don't know. Tell us about the Serbian markets. Oh, this is Eleanor. My sister Eleanor is out. Oh, there's so many questions. I'm sorry I missed all of these questions, guys. Okay, let me see here. Please, machine. So, did you write the stories in words before you draw them? Yes. I write them in words, but only sometimes. I tend to write them in like bullet points. I'll be like, as if I'm going to remember all the details later. I'll be like, the thing, just very random, very, very basic details. And then later on, hopefully later on that day or later on that week when it's still fresh in my mind, I'll do like a sketch of it, like a storyboard, very, very rough. I like to draw rather than write the stories down because, I don't know, I find it easier that way. Because when I'm remembering the events, I tend to remember them visually more than in words. So yeah, I have like a bunch of journals of stories that, hopefully I'll find the space for them. Eleanor asked, tell us about the Serbian markets. So the Serbian markets were so awesome. So the one that I'm working on, let me see here. I have here's some pencil drawings. So this one here is a fish market, and that one was kind of on the edge of town. And this is a restaurant that was in the fish market. I mean, you can't really see it here, but they had the weirdest style. It was like they had these red bed sheets stapled to the ceiling with like gold ribbons scattered amongst it, like all stapled up to the roof. So there's like these billowing bed sheets coming down in like dark red coloring. And then the walls were painted dark red. And they had these like brick kind of shapes over the windows, like all bricked in. And the floor was also made of brick. And all the tables had kind of these white tablecloths with red napkins, very intense red and white scheme of color. And it was just, somebody's kind of like home decorating style, and they would make like fried fish there. So guys would like, it was right next to the river. I forget which river it was. So there's two rivers that go through there, but it would be like on the edge of the river. Guys would like get their fishing gear at the market where they sold fishing stuff, fishing supplies, and they would go and fish out of the river, and I guess they would just bring it to this place and they would fry it and sell it to people. So I don't know, it was interesting, and I really liked it. It's all very cute. So this is me. I mean, Langosh is kind of me a lot of the time. / he's also part of another really close friend of mine. It's me saying I like it, and my friend Alexander, you like it? Alexander was like constantly shocked that I liked things in Serbia. He like couldn't believe that somebody from Canada like liked the stuff. He was like pleasantly surprised. All right, so I mean, other stories about the markets. I mean, oh my God, there's like endless stories about the markets in Serbia. They're so nice. There's like, yeah, turn this around again. So there'd be like, so sort of like everyone goes shopping at the markets. So like supermarkets aren't really, well, maybe they are now. It could have changed since I was there, but when I was there, people didn't really go to the supermarket to buy food. Everybody went to the markets, and at the market you could get, you know, fresh cheese, fresh vegetables, fresh meat, all sorts of meats that I've like never seen or tried before. They had horse meat and all sorts of stuff. And there'd be like stray cats wandering around and stray dogs and just people of every description, every age, secondhand clothes, secondhand photographs. Like there's these amazing stalls of people just selling old photographs, old postcards and things like that. Really cool stuff. Usually like old cobblestones with like these like tents set up and people just like yelling out stuff, you know, like yelling out how much money they charge, you know. So if they were selling secondhand clothes, they would just be like yelling out how much. Gordon Ramsay would not approve. Yelling out like, you know, pet deset dinara, which is just like 50 cents kind of, you know, like 50 cents for each item, and you just go ramble through it and find some stuff. It was great. People were so nice there. There used to be this man at the market that I used to go to all the time, and he was this like little old guy, and his entire stall was just a little like gas burner, like a one burner gas burner, and a pot. And he would just boil coffee. So they make Turkish style coffee there. So he would just boil coffee and pour it into these little cups. And that was all he did. He just made coffee, his whole thing. And I would go there and I would bring my own mug because his cups were like these thin plastic cups that would like half melt and kind of burn your hands. So I brought my own mug, and he thought that was hilarious. And I would go there every day to get the coffee from him. And just people were so sweet. I miss the markets in Serbia so much. And I was actually listening to the radio yesterday, and they were talking about how because of this coronavirus, they're like, we need to shut down all of the wet markets. And I hadn't really thought about it, but those markets that I loved so much in Serbia were basically wet markets. I mean, there wasn't live animals there, but it was all fresh food. And so I was like, oh man, I don't know what those people would do if they shut those markets down. I don't know what people would do to get food even, because there's like no supermarkets there. So that would be sad if those markets closing was a outcome of, you know, the global pandemic, because they were wonderful places. I mean, I guess if they were spreading disease, it's not good. But I would miss them still. So let me see if there's any other questions. Yeah, so Gruel Eater. Maybe Langosh will make it to Wyoming and have to outrun a thunderstorm on horseback after skinny dipping in a cattle trough. Yeah. So this is the other thing. So Langosh and Peppi so far has taken place in Europe. So in Eastern Europe, in the Balkans, Hungary, and Serbia, and Bosnia. But I do want to bring Langosh to America and Canada for sure. So many great stories from America especially, yeah, stories from going to Wyoming with my friend Ashton. Just like incredible stories from America that are just as interesting and just as wonderful as any of the things that happened in Europe, for sure. So yeah, that's definitely in the cards for Langosh and Peppi, is a little romp around the States and Canada. All right, Please Machine. They will hang out and do gardening, maybe, the people from closed markets. I hope so. I mean, I hope that people who, if they lost their work at the market, I hope that they can fill their time with productive things like farming and gardening and doing creative stuff and spending time with their families. Like everybody else, I hope that they can come out of this thing okay. And I also just want to say that, since I'm here, whatever, with the platform, just want to say thanks to everybody out there who doesn't have the option of staying home because they're working in a hospital or an old folks home or a supermarket or any of those things. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing, because it's so important and it must be so scary right now, and you guys are so brave for doing that. So thank you for keeping us all alive right now. Please Machine, they have seen tougher days. That's true. That's a good reminder, actually. A lot of those people have been through some stuff, so puts things into perspective. If they can make it this far, they can probably make it even farther. Okay, Deborah Pollock. Hi, Mom. Have you talked about Peppi yet? No, I haven't. So Peppi is the dog. Let me just turn this thing around again here. So, if we go here. So that's Peppi right there. And Peppi is based on a real dog. And that dog's name was Peppi. And it was a dog that I traveled with a bit in Europe. And it was the dog of my friend Jan Neatfield and his wife Sol Unduraga. So they had this little terrier dog named Peppi who had a huge personality. Actually, the real Peppi, the real life Peppi, was a lot more intense than the Peppi in my book. So the Peppi in my book acts as more of a kind of like a foil. Like, Langosh isn't just going to be traveling around talking to himself. There has to be someone there that he's talking to, that he's communicating with and sharing the experiences with. At least that's how I felt. I felt like it wasn't going to make sense if he was just alone. So, hi. So Peppi made sense as a character to be there, and also kind of as like, kind of like that silent thing inside you. Like Snowy, exactly, like Snowy from Tintin. Yes, Christiane Conlon. Yes. Tintin was a big inspiration for me for this. So, you need something else. You can't just have one character all alone going through space. Because in the book, Langosh is traveling by himself, and there's not a lot, for quite a bit of the book, there's not a lot of interaction with other characters. For long stretches, he's just dealing with his own mind, what's happening in his life, the decisions that he's facing that are very difficult, and he's struggling with how to make those decisions. And Peppi is there as kind of like a foil, someone for him to talk to and to kind of process things with. So yeah. Oh, hey Andy. I see. Thanks for joining in. So Deborah Pollock, what are the little flags things coming up behind his ears? Those are his ears. Those are actually his ears. I'm going to show you right now. This is not a realistic depiction of a dog, okay? It's a character, and those little guys are his ears, and, is his feet, What more can I say? Those are his ears. They're not flags. But yeah, anyways, I think that, yeah, when I was doing this trip, there was a lot of tough questions floating around in my head, and there was big decisions to be made, not so much for myself, but for people who I cared about a lot. And, yeah, I think, a lot of this book is basically Langosh coming to terms with some pretty tough decisions that he has to make. And in the story, so Langosh has some legal troubles and some legal issues that he's dealing with, and, a history there that was, for the character, very, very difficult to deal with, to grapple with, and to come to some kind of acceptance over. So, so a large part of the book is about that. It's just about Langosh kind of exploring in his mind what he's going to do on a day-to-day basis, just kind of trying to enjoy each day. But the larger picture kind of is constantly invading that immediate pleasure that he might be experiencing. So if he's just trying to relax and enjoy a moment by a peaceful river in a mountain or something like that, he's only able to do that for so long before those questions come back into his head. So you have to just, there's certain things in life that are not easy to deal with, but you can't just pretend they're not there. You have to deal with them. So this book is a little bit about that as well. Yeah. Thanks for all the questions, everybody. I really appreciate it. It's nice to have some questions to answer, rather than just sit here talking. But anyways, let me talk a little bit about my process again, too. So when I'm drawing, this is Jerry Post, my dad. So Dad's saying that his favorite quote from the book is when it says, "It's like a still dignified yet insane Budapest, like a still dignified yet insane old lady lost in her memories while her skirt is on fire." So I like that quote too, and that actually is from a movie called A Kis Valentino, which is a Hungarian independent film from, probably the 80s. 80s or early 90s. And there's a scene in that movie where there's the main character is in his apartment, and kind of everyone in his family is losing their minds in one way or another. And at one point in the scene, kind of like the undercover police are coming up to ask some questions to him, and his aunt just walks by in the background and her skirt's on fire and she doesn't even realize it. And they're all trying to put her skirt out, and it's just kind of this weird scene in the movie that's a little bit about people just losing it in that system. So, Anna, please machine, how much documentary are in the stories? So how much are they real? It's kind of tricky to answer because they're all real. It's all really stuff that happened. I don't have enough imagination to make stuff up. That didn't happen to me. So it's all real, but it's been kind of cut. You'll appreciate this, Anna, because I'm going to use film terminology here. But it was cut and spliced. So it doesn't all happen in the same order that it actually happened in real life. And the characters are fictionalized. So they're not actually the people that it happened to either. So it's not pure documentary. It's not like I filmed everything and then just drew it exactly as it happened. But I did write everything down, and then I kind of altered it in such a way to make the book make sense, So I couldn't just write a book in real time, unless I wanted to write a book that was 5,000 pages long. So I cut things out and I added things in, and I heightened some stuff or put more emphasis on some things for some dramatic effect. But essentially everything that happens in the book did happen in real life to someone. So yeah, so just to answer that question, it's all based on real stuff. So while I'm drawing, I'll just show you guys. I'm gonna show you guys my little studio space here, so you can see where I work. So this is my drawing desk. So this is where I did my book, and this down here is my Tupperware container, and there is like 3 more of these containers filled with paper. This is the book itself. So and it's kind of like drawn out, but not, you know, not in the size that it actually came out in. So these are all of the drawings. It's crazy. A lot of work. So this is where I do all my drawings here. And this is my stereo. I listen to the radio a lot while I draw. Currently, I'm pretty into Seaside FM, 105.9, Halifax, Nova Scotia. It's pretty good. But I also listen to a lot of mixtapes. So, yeah, I'm into oldies. So I got some good mixtapes of like oldies tunes. I listen to these a lot when I'm drawing. So I got, what do I got in here? I've got all of these awesome songs. Take a screenshot, people, because if you want a good mixtape, all of these songs are amazing. Especially, let me see here, where The Chicken and the Hawk, that's a good one. Please Be My Girlfriend. I mean, they're all great. So yeah, I like oldies tunes. And then my friends, my like dear sweet friends, have made me great mixtapes that I have kept for many, many years. Probably longer than they should technically be running. But this is my one. This one is like 1/2 Polish tunes, 1/2 Russian tunes. I really like listening to this one if I'm in kind of a moody mood. So it's got, what have I got in here? I think it's Yanka Diaglieva on one side. So if you guys want to listen to some, maybe this could be like a recommendation of music to listen to while you read the book. Listen to Yanka Diaglieva, because she's so good and so touching and so wonderful. Kind of a folk punk person. Let me see. I'm looking at these comments here. Where can you buy it? If you're asking where can you buy the book, then you can buy it online at Conundrum Press, directly from Conundrum Press. Or you can also buy it on Amazon. I would Google it and then see what comes up. Such an amazing book. Thank you very much, Andy. How much time a day do you spend working on the book, and what was your workflow? Oh my god. It really depended on like where I was. So, oh my god, I've only got 1 minute and 34 seconds remaining. Yeah, I would spend up to 8 hours a day working on the book. When I was in my buy it at Strange Adventures. Oh my god, Andy, thank you. I actually have a list of things over here that I'm like, don't forget to mention it. Thank you, Strange Adventures, for hosting this. You can buy the book at Strange Adventures. They will deliver it to you if you're local. If you're not local, then check out your own independent bookstore and see if they can carry it or find it for you. Thomas and Eugenie. Oh, Thompson, Eugenie Thompson. Ah, hey, Jeannie. How can I get a signed copy of the book? I can sign one and mail it to you because you're my aunt, so you get special privileges. So yes. Oh yeah, the bookmark on Spring Garden. I'm not sure if they have it or not, but Strange Adventures definitely does. So if you're local, go to Strange Adventures. If you are not local, go to your local bookstore and try to find it. If you can't make it to your bookstore, if they're closed, then order it online. That's what I would recommend. Let me see here. Only 23 seconds remaining. I'm going to say thank you, everybody, so much for coming here and asking me questions. and watching me jabber on for an hour about what I do. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you like the book.